In this video, I'm going to show you how to build this modern portfolio landing page in WordPress using a builder known as Breakdance Builder. You're going to learn how to build this from scratch. So let's take a look at what we're going to be building. The first thing we're going to do is the header, and then the header is going to have the menus with this rollover effect. And when we scroll the hero section, take a look at the hero section, you're going to see that it has a parallax effect, and we have a button here that links to the next section. And then we have this scrolling logo, and we have the design here that sticks. And as you can see, this next section, the selected works, it has a parallax effect, also with custom buttons. And this div here has this glass morphism effect, which has this kind of like an iPhone feel, you know what you see on the iPhone sometimes. And that's basically all for that section. And then we have a next section here that sticks. And then we have a different kind of button here. It's a call to action button that looks a bit different from this. And then we have a screenshot of the different works. And if you scroll down, you can see that parallax effects, you know, the scroll animation. While this one scrolls out like this one scrolls in, you know, in opposite direction. And then we have the final get in touch section, and you have the social icons, and you also have this back to top. So we're going to be doing all that in Breakdance. I've already gone ahead to set up my WordPress. If you want to know how to set up Breakdance before you start doing anything in Breakdance, you could take a look at the video. I'm going to link right here at the top right corner. I've gone ahead to upload the images I'm going to use in the media library. And then I've gone ahead to set up Breakdance, and we are going to be using Breakdance Pro version. I've put my license here, and I've also ensured that my post type is set to page so Breakdance can edit pages. After that, you're going to go to theme, then make sure you disable theme because we want to use Breakdance to style everything. I'm going to go to page, and then I'm going to add a new page, and I'm going to call this landing. So that's going to be my landing page, and then I'm going to publish it, and I'm going to edit with Breakdance. Now, the first thing that we should do should be to create the header. So I'm just going to go to the back end of WordPress, and we're going to go to Breakdance again, and I'm going to go to headers. I want to click to add a new header right there, and then I'm just going to call it main header, and then I'm going to apply that header everywhere. I'm going to add the header. Then I'm going to go ahead and edit in Breakdance. The first thing I want to do is to click add, and then I'm going to add my header builder. And inside that header builder, I'm going to add a div. So I want to make that 2 divs. This is going to be my logo wrapper. This is going to be my menu wrapper. By default, the header builder stacks child elements horizontally. I'm going to click here, and then I'm just going to add an image. And that image is going to be my logo. I'm just going to quickly select the logo that I've uploaded already. I'm going to go to media library, and this is going to be the logo I'm going to select. I'm going to go ahead and change the background of that header to black. Actually, I don't want to use real black, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring in an image. I probably should duplicate this. I just want to bring in an image so I can select the color. And I'm going to select the header. And the color picker, I'm going to pick this color. That's going to give me the color that has the same background as the background of the image we're going to use. That is the color we're going to be using for all the blacks on the website. I'm going to click here. Then I'm going to save that color. I'm going to call it faded black. Then I'm just going to save. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. This is my logo. Let me just call that logo. And that logo, I want it to link to a specific page. So I'm going to click here, link. I'm going to say link to URL. That URL, I'm going to just come here and select site URL. And that's going to automatically link to the home page. Then over here, I'm going to add a menu. Then I have 2 options here. I can add the menu builder or the normal WordPress builder. But since we're doing a landing page, a one-page website, I'm going to use the menu builder. That menu builder has a lot of options in it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here to the style. I'm going to go to the desktop menu, to the settings, typography, and then I'm going to change the color to white. Now, I don't want it to be exactly white. I want to bring it down a little bit like that. And then I'm going to save that as my off-white. I'm saving that as a preset, so I'll be able to use it later. So now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and delete all the other items except the menu link, because it's just the menu link we're going to be using. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to make that 4. The first one is going to be, do services, work, going to do about, then I'm going to do contacts. I'm going to go to the parent, the menu builder, and then I'm going to go to links. I want my font size to be 13 pixels. I'm going to go to advanced, and I want the line height to be 1. And then the letter spacing, I want it to be 2. And I want it to be uppercase. I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to go to effects type. I want it to be underline. I have that underline there. And I want the direction to be center. And I want the thickness to be 1 pixel. Now for the color, I'm going to choose the same color that we saved here as off-white. So it's going to have the same color as the menu. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go to size. I want to make it 5 pixels up and down. I'm going to go to the portrait, and you can see this is already stacking vertically. I'm going to select the header, and then I'm going to go to layout, stack vertically. I don't ever want it to stack vertically. I'm going to go back to menu, and I'm going to go to the mobile menu. And I'm going to set that to show at the tablet portrait. We're going to leave this as the default. And then what I'm going to do is the toggle. I'm going to go there and set that icon to the same off-white. And I'm going to click this open. As you can see, we have this as white. I don't want that to be white. And the background, I'm going to set it to that same black. And the border. And for the links, I'm going to open here. I'm going to choose no border. I don't want to have any border. And the links level 1, I'm going to set the color so that white. We could also horizontally center this at this breakpoint. I'm going to close that, and you can see when we come to these other breakpoints, everything looks good. So I guess we're done with the header and the menu. I'm going to save this. One thing I want to do is, this is not the font I want to use. So I'm going to go to the global styles, and then I'm going to go to typography. And then I'm going to set my font. I'm going to choose the Google font called Manjari there for the header, and I'm also going to choose the same for the body. Of course, it's not the same font that we're using here. This is a custom font that is not a Google font. But in a build here, we're going to use a Google font. But if you have a custom font that you want to use, you can go into preferences and you can select add a custom font by uploading your font. But right now we're going to use Google fonts. The base font size I'm going to choose here, the default is 16, but I'm just going to put 16 anyway. I'm not going to set up the other global styles right now. We're going to set them up as we go along. I'm going to save what I've done so far. We're going to go back here in order to have a rollover effect just like we have here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a little code snippet to use for that. I'm going to select the header builder. I'm going to drop in a code block here. I think I would like to disable the label. Okay. The first thing I want to copy is the CSS, and I'm going to put that CSS here. What the CSS basically does is that it targets this class, and then it targets the list items in the menu, and also targets the pseudo elements and adds some transition effects to them. For that code to work, we need the JavaScript code. So I'm going to also paste the JavaScript code here. You could see that this class hover rollover menu is also present in the JavaScript as much as it is present in the CSS hover rollover menu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the menu and add that class to that. I'm going to go to classes and just paste that class. Then I'm going to click, it's going to add. So if you see, that already gives us our rollover effect. I'm going to save this and let's look at the front end and see. So right now we have that rollover effect there. Let's go back to the mobile menu. I'm going to go back here and then I'm going to select that and go back here. And for the mobile menu, I want to make sure that for the typography, I'm just going to delete everything that we have here on the typography. And then I'm going to go to the desktop there. Let's go over here to the main. I'm going to go here and then I'm going to save this as a preset. I'm just going to save it as menu links. I'm going to save that now. It's using a preset. So if we go back to the mobile breakpoint for the mobile menu, the links, we go to typography level 1. We can just use that preset. Now, of course, right now we can see that nothing is there. So typography level 1. Now we're going to use that mobile link. Of course, we're going to still set the color to the color here. You can see that it adapts to that. The reason we're using a preset is that if we ever want to change the menu link, the typography in the menu links, all we need to do is to change it from the preset by going here, global settings, presets, menu links, and then we can change whatever we want to change here. So you can see we have that there. If you change this to 18, and then when you go to the mobile breakpoint, it's going to inherit that. So that is why we're using a preset. So I'm just going to undo that. We're done with the header. So it's time to go ahead and build the page. So we have our header showing now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add a section. And that section is going to have the background color of the black that we choose. And you can see that it's the same color here. And this is going to be our Parallax Hero. I'm going to go to the layout. I want everything to be centered inside this section. I'm going to close that, close the background. I'm going to go to size, the width. I want it to be full. I'm going to go to spacing, padding. I want the padding top and bottom to be 0. And because of the kind of effect we want to create, you see the parallax effect here? We want to set that section to have an overflow of hidden. To access the overflow property, it's not here in the styles panel. It's in the advanced panel, but the shortcut I can just type over. And then I'm going to click this gear icon to give us the styles from the advanced and layout. Okay, I'm going to come here and set it to hidden. I think that's all we have to do to that. Inside there, I'm going to add a div. That div is going to be my parallax wrap. And inside there, we want to add 2 divs. I'm going to add a div. I'm going to duplicate. This is going to be the title wrap. And this is going to be the image wrap. I'm going to select the parallax wrap, and then I'm going to go to container width. I'm going to set it to 100%. I'm going to go to the layout. I want to stack horizontally. Center here, I'm going to align middle. And I want it to be vertical at tablet portrait. All our breakpoints will start from tablet portrait. I want to give it a height. Now, normally I would give it a minimum height, but because of the peculiar behavior I want to give it a height. The reason I want to give it a height is that if I reduce the screen size, I want the height, I need it to be tall. But as the screen goes smaller, I need it to reduce with the screen, so it doesn't become too tall when the width is smaller than the height. So to do that, I'm going to go to custom CSS of that, and then I'm going to write selector. I'm going to write height, and then that height will take 2 values. I want it to be 90 viewport height, but when the screen narrows, I want it to change to half the viewport width. So I'm going to use a mean function, and then I'm going to write 50 VW, 90 VH. What the mean function does, essentially, it uses the smallest value at a particular time. So at this point, the smallest value here is the height. But as the screen narrows, the smallest value will become the 50 viewport width. Now here on this container, I'm going to add a heading, and I'm also going to add a text. I'm going to select that heading. It's going to be my H1. I'm going to go to the color, and then I'm going to make it white. I'm going to change the text to design with breakdance. For the size of this text, I want the size to be 144 pixels, something that big. But as the smallest screen size, I want it to be like 25 pixels. But I'm not going to do that because I want it to be fluid, so I'm going to delete that. Let's go back to the desktop. And what I'm going to do is I want to set this to custom. I need this to be fluid. So at the biggest breakpoint, I want it to be 7.5 VW. So that means it's 7.5 viewport width. But at the smallest breakpoint, I need it to be 2.5 rem. But the problem with this is as we go down to the smallest breakpoint, at some point it becomes too small. At this breakpoint, we want it to be like 2.5 rem. We don't want it to be smaller than 2.5 rem at the smallest breakpoint. So I'm going to delete this from here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use a max function. I'm going to say max. I'm going to open and close the bracket. And then we write in, we say you're going to be 7.5 viewport width. But at any point, if you're smaller than 2.5 rem, we want you to switch to 2.5 rem. So you're going to see as we move this, it's reducing, but at some point it just stays at 2.5 rem. We could also attempt to limit the size of these like so. So I can count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I guess we have about 11 characters. So I can just make the width 11 ch. change this to custom. So that 11ch allows it to break at that point. I'm going to go in again to typography advanced. The line height, I want it to be 1. Then I need the weight to be just 400. I want the characters to be a little bit closer to each other. So I'm going to go into the advanced, and then the letter spacing, I'm going to change it to M, and then I'm going to say 0.05 negative. And that's just going to bring them just a bit together. That is how I want it to look. Let's try 0.4. Okay, having done all of that, I'm going to save the whole of that as a preset just in case I ever want to use it again. I'm going to call it hero title, and then I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to select this text, and I want to paste in a write-up there. And I'm going to go to size and just make it 520 pixels. I'm going to go to the typography. I'm going to set the color to something. Now I would have chosen this color, but it's a little bit too bright. I want to bring it down a little bit. And then I'm going to save that as another of light gray. And I want the size to be like 22 here. And I want it to be like 18 at the smallest breakpoint. But I want it to be fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go to this website, and then I'm going to use the clamp function. So right here we have a root font size to be 16, and we are using the viewport width. So the minimum is going to be 18. That's the font size, and the maximum is going to be 22. The minimum viewport, I want to set it to 480 so that at 480 we have already hit this 18. Maximum viewport width, we want to set our viewport width to 1600. I'm going to calculate, and then I'm going to copy that. Go here, and then I'm going to paste that. Go to custom, and I'm going to paste that. That's going to give us our size. So right here we have 22. By the time we reduce, as we go down, you can see the font size reduces accordingly. But the thing is that our viewport width is not 1600. What I'm going to do is to quickly go into the global settings. And then if you go here to containers, you can set your container width, which will take care of your site width, 1600. But I will not recommend doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this out. And then I'm going to go to my code style sheet. I'm going to add a new style sheet, and then there I'm just going to write colon root, and I'm going to write dash dash site width, and my site width is going to be 1600 pixels. That's going to be my site width. The reason I'm putting it in a variable is because I might want to use that value anywhere. But the problem with having 1600 as your site width as a very wide site like this is that sometimes when you're viewing it on a smaller laptop, these touches all the way to the edge. And I don't want that. So what I want to do is I'm going to use a mean function. So I'm going to say mean, and then I'm going to tell it to be 1600. But then if 90% of the viewport width is smaller than 1600, then it should switch to 90% of the viewport width. So you see on a bigger screen like this, you have it to be 1600. But when the screen is small, it switches to 90 VW. So you can have enough space left and right. So I'm going to copy this site width, this variable. Let me close this. And then I'm going to go to container width. I'm going to go to custom, and then I'm going to write var variable, and then I'm going to paste that. Then I'm going to close that bracket. So now I have my site width. We're going to be using this variable to reference our site width. I'm going to close that, save, and I'm going to go back to the structure panel. I'm going to add an image here inside the image wrap. And then I'm going to select the image that I want to use. I'm going to select the image wrap. I'm going to go to layout. I want the image to align to the right and to the bottom. I'm going to go to container. I want the width to be viewport width. I want it to be 50% of the viewport width. Then I'm going to go to margin. I'm going to go to advanced, and the margin left, I'm going to set it to auto so it moves to the edge here. But at this breakpoint, we don't want the margin left to be auto. At this breakpoint, I'm going to come here, choose custom and write on set so we don't have that auto here. Let's go back to the higher breakpoint. So right now you see that even though we want this to stack horizontally, it is moving on to the next line because there's not enough space for both of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the parallax wrap. That is because of the flexbox property that causes this to wrap, and unfortunately there is no option to turn off the flex wrap. I'm just going to come here, flex wrap, no wrap, and then it's just going to work. So let's see, move this like that, but we see that that height that we set is affecting it. So we're going to go back here, going to copy the whole of this, and we're going to come back to our tablet portrait. I'm going to paste that. Okay, but I want to delete this and change the height to auto. And that's going to give us the auto height. For the title wrap, I'm going to come here and set the line to center. And then for the parallax wrap, I want to give it a gap at that breakpoint of 40 pixels. Let's go back to the desktop. And I'm going to just close this. So right now you see that because we set a section to full, this is moving to the very edge of the section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that title wrap, and then I'm going to go to position, select the gear icon to show the advanced settings. I'm going to position it as absolute, and then I'm going to set the Z index to 1. And then the width, go to container width. We're going to change the width to site width. So I'm going to say var site width. Now that site width is the variable we created earlier, and that is going to give us what we want. But the problem is that we have lost the stacking. So at that breakpoint, let's go back to that position, advanced. At these breakpoints, we have position absolute, but at these breakpoints, the tablet portrait, we want to set the position back to static. So we don't have that problem. The next thing I want to do is this button here. Because of how we want these to behave, you see the whole of this is going to become a parallax content. We're going to be using a scroll animation with it, and because of that we need the button to be outside the document flow. I'm going to select the Parallax Hero, and then I'm going to add a div. And that div is going to be my button wrap. Inside that div, I'm going to add a button. But right now, I want to add a button, a regular button, and then we're going to go ahead and build our own custom button to look like what we saw on the sample site. I'm going to select that button wrap, and then I'm going to go to position, advanced, click this to show the advanced style, and then I'm going to set it to absolute. I'm going to set the bottom to 20 pixels, and then I'm going to close this and go to the width, and I also want the width to be site width. I'm just going to come here to this title wrap and just copy that. Go to the button wrap and paste it. And then I'm going to go to layout and make sure that it aligns to the right. I'm going to save that, and let's take a look at the front end and see what we have done. So you can see that this image is cutting into the header. So we don't want that. How do we solve that? One thing I've noticed is that the normal image element sometimes is difficult to get the height. So to bypass that issue, I'm just going to come here again. Then I'm going to select this image, and then I'm going to copy the URL. And then I'm going to go ahead and insert the HTML image. And then I'm going to come here to attribute and paste that URL to HTML image. I'm going to delete all the other stuff. The width, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to make it 100%. Then I'm going to make the height 100%. But one thing I realized is that this height doesn't actually affect the actual height on the front end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to advanced, and then I'm going to write selector. Let's close this so we can see. I'm going to do it from here. I'm going to set the height to 100%. Let's go to this image wrap, and then I want to also set a height there to 100%. You see, if I take out that 100% height, you can see the difference. But if I don't want to use CSS, let's see if going to wrapper, size and height will work. So let's give it a height of 100%. So I'm going to save this, and we're going to look at the front end at what we have achieved. But the problem now is that our image looks a bit squashed. You can see squashed. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. I'm going to select that image again, and then in the custom CSS I'm going to write object fit contain, and then I'm going to write object position bottom, so it always stays at the bottom and it's not squashed anymore. I'm going to save that, refresh this. You can see it's correct now. Let's go back. It seems something is wrong with our button. So we can't see our button, but what we want is to be able to see our button. So we may have to reduce that viewport height. So I'm going to go to that section again, go to modified. No, it wasn't in the section, it was in the parallax wrap. I'm going to go to modify to check everything we've modified. I'm going to change that to 80%. 80 viewport height. So let's save that. We should be able to see it now. Everything looks good. So at this breakpoint, we need that button to come to the center. So what are we going to do? I'm going to come here and I'm going to select that button wrap and set it to align center. Now it's time to build a custom button. I'm going to save this, and then instead of having a button, I'm just going to drop in a wrapper link. I'm going to delete this button inside the button wrap. I'm going to add a regular text, and then I'm going to add an icon. I want to go here, choose layout. I want it to be horizontal, align space between, and vertical align is going to be middle. Of course, I need the icon to come first. And for the container, I'm going to go to padding. I'm going to give it 6 pixels up and down and 12 left and right. And then I'm going to give it a gap of 16 pixels. I'm going to come to this text and I want this text to have the same styles as the menu. So I'm going to go there, typography, go to presets and choose menu links. So we're going to have the same text style, but the difference is that I'm going to change the color also to that menu links color. Let's just change the text to my service. And then for the icon, I'm going to select the icon that looks like this. Arrow down icon. I'm going to go to icon and then I'm going to go to icon. I'm just going to write arrow, a double R, and then I'm going to choose the one that faces down. We have two types. This is fatter and this is slimmer. I want the slim one. I'm going to go to style, icon, color. The color is going to be this color, the off-white color. The size, I want it to be like 18 pixels. I want it to be outlined. I want it to be round. For the background, I want it to be darker than this, so I want to set it to something like so. I'm going to save it as button BG. And then for the border, I think I will just pick something like this. And then for the outline width, I want it to be 1. And then for the padding, we don't want it to be too much. I'm just going to leave it at 10 pixels. On a second look, I think we have too much letter spacing here, both on the menu and the button. So I'm just going to go to the global settings. And we have that, that preset, menu links. And then I'm going to go to advanced and set that letter spacing to just 1. So you see it's going to affect both the menu and the button. You see, I think that looks better. So we have our custom button. We're going to tackle this rollover effects later. For now, let's go ahead and build the rest of the page. The next thing we want to tackle is this effect, this parallax effect. And that is why we had this parallax wrap, because that is going to control everything that is within the parallax wrap. But right now we don't even have enough content to scroll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a section, and then I'm going to set that section height to, let's say, a custom height of 200 viewport height. And then we can scroll. I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to advanced animation, scrolling animation. I'm going to enable scrolling animation. I'm going to go to vertical position. At start, I want to put it at 0. Middle, I want to put it at 0. Then here at the end, I want it to move 40 viewport height. So you can see that it moves 40 viewport height. But I don't want it to start too early. So I want to move this trigger all the way here to like 45%. You could see, because if it is starting too early, you could see it's already moving down while we are still at the top of the page. So I want it to start about there, let's say 45. Now we could scroll down a little bit before it starts the parallax effect. I'm going to go there again and add opacity, and opacity is going to be 110. So right here you could see that everything works perfectly. Go to the front end and I'm going to refresh this, and we have a button that looks good here, and then we have that parallax effect. But I don't think I want that parallax effect on mobile. So if you don't want it on mobile, you could go ahead, go there, go to advanced, then disable. I want to disable it at tablet portrait. So at this point, you see it's still working, but at tablet portrait, it's no longer working. So sometimes on mobile device, you want to disable it. So I'm going to leave it disabled at mobile breakpoint. Alright guys, so before we continue, if you love what you're seeing so far, please hit the like button. I need your likes. So don't just watch, do me a favor and drop a thumbs up on the video. Thank you very much. Next thing we're going to do is to go ahead and put this next section. For this section, we've already put a height, so I'm just going to delete everything here. This is going to be our service section. I'm just going to write services. I'm going to go ahead and give it an ID of service. And that's because we want to link this button to that section. So in this link wrapper, I'm going to come here, and then the link is going to be hash service. That hash refers to the ID of this next section. The reason we're doing that is so that when we come here and click, it's going to scroll down to the second section. All right, let's move to that section. We need the logo scroller, and I'm going to go in and add a logo list element. I'm going to go ahead and add the logos that we want. From the media library, we have a couple of logos. I'm going to select all these logos with the exception of this one. Let's go to the style, go to the list. I'm going to go to logo and the height. I'm going to reduce the logo height to 30 pixels. I'm going to go to spacing. I'm going to set the spacing to 100. I'm going to save that and then take a look at the front end. You can see we have our logo slider. Probably you don't want it to stop and hover. So you're going to go to the animation type infinite. Save it. Right now it stops and hover. But once it finishes saving, I'm going to refresh it again. And you can see it no longer stops and hover. For our next content, I'm going to add the grids element. Then I'm going to go ahead and remove the settings here because I want it to be 2 columns grid. At the tablet portrait breakpoint, I want it to be 1 column grid. Let's go back. Inside there, I'm going to add 2 divs. I'm going to add a div, duplicate it. Inside this div, I'm going to add another div. That div is going to hold the content. This is going to be 100% width. I'm going to give it a padding of 20 pixels all around. I'm going to add a text. I'm going to add a heading, and then I'm going to add another text. For these, I just want to copy something there. For these, it's going to be services. And these, I just want to copy a text and paste there. I'm going to go back to the div. I want to set a gap of 20 pixels. For these services, I want it to have a similar style to this. So I'm going to go to the typography and then I'm going to select that menu link. But I don't want it to be linked to the menu link preset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select custom to unlink it. But it's going to return the same value. So I'm going to change this font size to 16 pixels. And change the font weight to 500. Perhaps 600. And maybe with a higher letter spacing of, let's say, 2 pixels. For that, we want to save it as a separate preset. I'm going to call it a pre-title. That's going to hold the styles for all the text that comes before our heading. I'm going to select this and then I'm going to make it H2. I'm going to go here and then for the typography, I want the font weight to be 400. I want to set a font size, but I want to check what that font size is going to be. I'm going to check here. So we have this 48 at the desktop. Then we go to mobile. That is going to be 32. So our H2 is 32 on mobile and 48 on the desktop. All right, so I'm going to go to these and then I'm going to write 32 at the smallest and 48 here. I'm going to calculate and then I'm going to copy. And then for that font size for the H2, I'm going to drop it there. But we don't want to be styling our H2 individually. So I'm going to save that as a preset. I'm going to call it H2. I'm going to save. And we don't also want to be using a preset, okay? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just remove the whole of that style from there. Now we don't have that style anymore here. I'm going to duplicate this to show you something. We have 2 H2s here. I'm going to go to the global styles and then under advanced headings, I'm going to edit the H2 and apply that preset of H2. Automatically all our heading is going to have that H2 style. I'm going to save that and then we're done. I'm going to select this text and just go to the size here and give it a width of 480. And I'm going to do the same thing to this. Yep, so I'm going to come here and I'm going to add a div. Actually, I'm going to delete that. Then what I want to do is to copy this div. Then I'm going to put it here. Now for this div, I'm going to go ahead and change this to 01. I'm going to change the tag to H3. And for the H3, I want to also give it a style, okay? I'm going to remove this here. I'm going to come here, and the font size for H3 is always going to be 24 pixels. And the weight is always going to be 400. And I want the H3s to always be all caps. Then once I'm done with that, I'm going to save it as H3. And then go to the global styles, go to advanced heading, select H3, and apply that H3 preset to it. So even if I come here and I delete all the styles from here, you can see all the styles remains. So all our H3 is going to be styled from the global settings, from the preset. I'm going to change this to web design. Let's go back to the structure panel. I'm going to save the global styles. What I want to do is to put these two inside the same div. So I'm going to add a div. Then I'm going to move this heading there. I'm going to move this there. So for this div, I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to give it a class of service card. And then I'm going to come here and give this a class of service inner wrap. The reason I'm giving it this class is because I'm going to duplicate this 3 times, and then I'm going to style everything from the class. So what I'm going to do now is that in Breakdance, you really don't need to select the elements you're styling as long as you know the class. So I'm going to go to selectors, then I'm going to select the service card. You can see I can select any other element. It doesn't really matter as long as I'm on the right selector. I'm going to go to the background, and I want to ensure the background color is white. As you can see, my page has an off-white color, so the white really shows up. For the size, I want to give it a width of 100%. And for the borders, I want to give it a border radius of about 20 pixels, or maybe 10 pixels. And the border width and the border color is going to be something light like that, maybe a bit lighter. And the border style is going to be solid. You can see the style applies to all of them at once. And then for the layout, I want it to display as flex. I want the flex direction to be row. I want the gap to be like 40, and the flex wrap, I want it to be no wrap. And it seems the gap is not responding. Let's check modified and see if we had any gap settings. Just going to select these and check. Okay, so we had a gap setting on the ID. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that gap settings from the ID. Then I'm going to go back here and set it to 40. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to selectors, the inner wrap. I want to go to layout, display, flex, and I want to set the gap to like 20. 20 seems to be a bit too much. I'm just going to make it 10. As you can see, all of them are being updated at the same time. Let's go back to the card, and I'm going to go to spacing. I'm going to give it a padding of 32 pixels all round. And the reason that is not working, of course, it appears we also had paddings on the ID level because I copied it from here. I'm going to remove the padding from that ID, go to modified, remove the padding, go to modified, remove the padding. Now at this breakpoint, everything we wanted to stack correct, and this breakpoint, everything is still okay. Let's look at that. From that breakpoint, everything is stacking correctly. In Breakdance, you have to save the changes you made to the selector. I'm going to go back here, and then I want to separate this with a gap. So I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to separate it with a gap of 40 pixels. A bit too much. Let's make it 20. The next thing we want to do is to have this sticky effect. So I'm going to come here first. I'm going to write POS, position. You click here, then you have position sticky. I'm going to give it 100 pixels to the top, and we don't have enough height. So I'm going to add another section, and then I'm going to give it a height of 200 VH so that we can scroll. You can see that we have that sticky effect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. I don't even need, like I said, I don't need to select that. All I need to do is to go to selectors, and then for that service card, I'm going to go to the sticky. So I'm going to search here, position, select sticky. As you can see, all of them will also stick to the top with an offset of 100 pixels. So I'm going to save that, and then we're going to take a look at the front end to see how we are doing. So I have these, and I have that, and then I have the sticky. But then this is too close to this, and we don't want that. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to select these. I'm going to select the parent section, and then I'm going to give it a gap. I'm going to go to layout, and I'm going to give it a gap of 80. and that should separate them and make it look good. Alright, so if I refresh the front end, we have enough space there. So the next section we're going to create is this parallax section. So what I'm going to do is, we have a section here, so I'm just going to remove that height. Next thing I want to do is to add a div, and then I'm going to make that div 100% width. And inside there, I'm going to add a heading. I'm going to add a button, but in this case, I want to add a custom button, just like my button here. So I'm going to copy this one, and then I'm going to paste it here. And I want this layout to be horizontal, space between, and middle aligned. But this button is going to be different. If I go to typography, this button makes use of the preset of the menu link. The only thing different here is the color. The color is not part of the preset, so I'm going to come here and then I'm going to select this color. I'm going to select the icon. I'm going to check modified, and the background color here, I'm going to choose a dark color. I'm going to go to the icon, then I'm going to write a double arrow to bring out the arrows, and that arrow is going to be this one. Save that, and this is going to be see all, and this is going to be an H2 also, and the title is going to be selected work. I'm going to call this section works, and I'm going to go ahead and give it an ID of work. For this service section, we gave it an ID called service, right? Yes, we did. Now, why are we doing that? Because we are planning to link each of these menu items to those sections. We're going to do that later. After this div, we want to insert another div. So I'm going to add another div here, and the width is going to be 100%. But I think I like that div to be styled from a class. So I'm going to give it a class of work card. I'm going to add that. So I'm just going to rename it as work card. Inside there, I'm going to add another div. And that div is going to be my image wrap. And then inside there, I'm going to add another div, and that div is going to be the work content. I'm going to go to selectors. Remember, you don't need to select any elements. I'm going to go to work card. For the size, the width is going to be 100%. The overflow is going to be hidden because we're going to add a border radius to it, and we don't want the image we're going to put inside there to overflow. I'm going to go to the border radius, and I'm going to give it a value of 20 pixels. Let's go to the background. And I just want to give it a background to see what I'm doing so we can see that it is working, but it doesn't really need a background, so I'm going to take that off. What I want to give it is the padding. So let's go to spacing, a padding of about 32 pixels all around, or we could give it a calculated value. So I already have a calculated value that I did, so I will come to custom, paste my own. And the height is going to be, we are going to use a minimum height this time. It's going to be 90 viewport height, and the layout we want it to display as flex, and the flex direction as row, and align items flex end. That will place all the items at the bottom here, and justify items flex start. Okay, so it's going to be on the bottom left. Okay, so let's save that. I'm going to go out of here and I'm going to go to image wrap. For the image wrap, I want to give it a class. I'm just going to call it work card image wrap. And that class is going to allow us to control all the cards that have similar class in a single place. The only difference is we're going to give each of them a unique background image. So this one is going to have a background image. The background is going to be image, and then I'm going to select a background. For this, I'm going to go ahead and select this background, and then we're going to go to the selector, and then we're going to look for that selector. And for the position, advanced position, I'm going to make it absolute, and the top, bottom, left, and right is going to be 0. For the image setting here, I'm just going to choose cover, no repeat, and the position set to center. But in the class, I want to go back to the size, and we want the height to be a little taller than the container, so I'm going to set the height to 120%, just a little bit taller than the section. You can see it comes out all the way here. It appears this is not the right image for this, because as you can see here, this image is darker. That is what I should have chosen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop things inside this div. And this is the work content. So I'm going to come here and give it a class also. I'm going to call it work card content. I'm going to add a heading inside there, and then I'm going to add a text. And I think I would like to also add a button, but it's going to be a custom button. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to come here and just drop that button there. And here I will change the text color of that button to white. I'm just going to go ahead and change the color of the icon from that faded black to something like this. And for the heading, and let's see if we can change the text color from the parent class card content. I'm going to go to selectors. I'm going to go to work card content typography. Let's change it to white, and it is not affecting. Let's check the front end and see if it's going to reflect there. So what I was expecting was for the parent's color styles to be inherited by the text. But what if I come here? Well, to enforce that, let's go to the typography, color, and write inherit. As you can see, it inherits, and I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come here also, and then I'm going to paste that inherit. So that ensures it inherit whatever color style I give the parent. But this is going to be an H3. And I'm just going to change that and write a rec. Our H3 style was uppercase, but I want this one to be lowercase. So I'm going to go to that, and I'm going to choose the preset of H3, which is exactly the same style, but I'm going to unlink it, and then I want to come here and remove that, and I'm going to set that to be title case. I'm going to save that as another H3 preset. In this case, I'm just going to call it H3-lower. And anytime we want to use H3 lowercase, that's the preset we're going to use. And then I'm going to copy this text and put it here. What I want to do is the size, I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and then I'm going to give it a maximum width of 500. And then I'm going to go to the padding. I'm going to give it a 32 pixel padding all around. And for the background, I want to give it a transparent background, something like that, but transparent. And I want to give it a border of say 20 pixel, maybe 10. And then I think I should go for a gap of 20. Of course, the gap isn't working because under the layout, I need to first set the display to flex before the gap works. Now we need to have that glass morphism effect, that blurry effect. So I'm going to go to custom CSS, and then I'm just going to write selector, and I'm going to write backdrop filter. I'm going to write blur, and then I want to put like 5 pixels of blur. 5 pixels doesn't really do it, and we need it to be really blurry. So I'm just going to take it up to 20 pixels of blur. All right, that's what we want. Then we could always go back to the border and give it a 1 pixel of border, maybe something like this, maybe something lighter. And then for the text, I'm just going to change it to this cover. Save that. We can always tweak that background color to make it a little bit darker, something like that. So now that we have that, next thing we want to do is apply that parallax effect to this. Now that parallax effect is going to be on the image wrap. Now the parallax effect cannot be applied on the class. It has to be applied on the ID level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it first before I duplicate these divs. So I'm going to go to advanced. I'm going to go to animation. I'm going to go to scrolling animation. I'm going to enable it. And then under vertical position, I'm going to make this VH. And we're going to have a -30. So I want it to animate from -30 VH to 20 VH. So you can see the parallax effect on that div with the background image. It is not actually the background that is animating, but the image wrap itself is animating. So you can see that parallax effect. So I'm going to save these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this work card. I'm going to duplicate it 2 times to make it 3. We have this, and we have that. I'm going to select this. I'm going to select it and give it a gap of 20 pixels. So we have that separation, and all of them are animating as they are supposed to be. And what I'm going to go in there to do is just to change their background images. Then I'm going to go ahead and change this right up to Alvin. Saved, and then I'm going to go to the front end. Let's see what we are doing so far. So we have that, we have these, we have these, we have that parallax effect. The blurry background, very nice. And then on the mobile breakpoint from these, we want these to be centered. So that div, I'm going to go to the selector. It was the work card. So let's go to selectors, work card, and one thing about Breakdance is at the lower breakpoint, you still have to redeclare the display properties to have the options. Justify content will be center because we want to place that at the center. As you can see, the styles applies to all the cards. So that's all we need to do to that card at that breakpoint and nothing else, I suppose. If you really want to go in and disable that parallax animation at that breakpoint, remember that it is possible to do that by going into the animation and then go into advanced and then disable at a specific breakpoint. But I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to save this so we have taken care of the responsiveness and everything looks good. So what I'm going to do is, now if you check this, you can see that we have this type of section again here. I'm going to skip doing that section because I've already shown you how to build it here. So I don't want to waste time building that same section again. So we're going to go ahead and build this section. So what I'm going to do is to add a section. And for that section, I want everything to align to the center. And I want the width to be a full width. And for the spacing, I don't want the left and right padding on that section. I'm going to drop in a div in that section, and then I'm going to drop in a heading. I'm going to also drop in a text. This heading is going to be an H2. Let's select that div. And we're going to go to layout and centralize element. This is going to be a award-winning website. And then I'm just going to paste the text there, and I'm going to give the text a maximum width of 480. For the parent div, we're going to have a gap of 10 pixels. And inside that same section, I'm going to drop in a grid element. So just go ahead and add a grid element. I'm going to go ahead and delete the default settings. I want it to be a 3-column grid. I'm going to give it a background color of black. And for the overflow, I'm just going to set the overflow to hidden. And then I want to go to height, and I'm going to change that to custom. So basically I want to do the same thing I did for the hero section, where I gave the parallax wrap a min function. So this is going to be 110 viewport height, and the minimum value will be 60 viewport width. Depending on which viewport unit is the smallest at a particular time, you can see how it reduces. And inside there, I want to have 3 divs. I'm going to add a div. Now take note that on the grid we have 3 columns grid. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the divs to 3. I think I might have left a setting there. So I'm removing that center. I'm going to delete 2 and leave 1. So we're going to work with 1 for now. I'm going to drop in an image. So we want to have 3 images. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that and duplicate that. We're going to add a gap, and that gap is going to be the same as what we're going to give the grid gap. So I'm going to go ahead and give my grid item the same gap. So when I duplicate this, you can see that we have the same gap. So the next thing I'm going to do is, for the first div, I'm going to start populating the image. I'm going to do this off screen so you don't have to watch me do it. Okay, so I've gone ahead to add the images, but the center one is going to have more images. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate 1. So I'm going to move that one to the top here, and then I'm going to replace that image. Okay, so now we have 4 images for that. So at the moment, everything seems to be okay. Our grid looks fine. I mean, we could use calculated values to ensure that the grid has fluid spacing. Okay, because right now the spacing don't really look good on mobile. As you can see, they are too large. I already have a calculated value based on what I already showed you, so you can go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to replace that with custom. I'm going to paste that calculated value there, and then in the grid I'm going to put in the same calculated value. So that makes it such that if you go to the lower breakpoint, you can have a reasonably sized space. You could tweak it to fit what you really want. So the next thing we're going to do is to animate this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and collapse these divs. So I'm going to select the first one and go to advanced. I'm going to go to animation. I'm going to go to scroll animation, enable, and go to vertical position. And I'm going to set the unit to VH, and I'm going to give it a negative 20 VH. And the end is going to be 10 VH. So it's scrolling from a negative 20 VH. So you can see how it behaves as a result of that. It's scrolling from a negative 20 VH. It's coming out to 10 viewport height. So that's the distance it's scrolling. So initial positioning moves it up negative 20 VH and then it comes down. Now, since the first and the last divs are going to have the same kind of animation, I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy from the first div, and then I'm going to right click on the second div and click paste settings. The first time you want to paste something, the browser is going to ask for permission. So you're going to allow it. And you can see the animation setting has been applied to the third div. For the middle div is going to be animating in the opposite direction. So for the middle one, I'm going to go to advanced animation, enable animation, vertical position, and then I'm going to scroll from 0 viewport height to 30 viewport height. Actually, that's supposed to be negative 30 viewport height. So right now it is animating from 0 to negative 30. As you can see, it's moving in the opposite direction to the other ones. So we're going to save that. And then let's take a look at the front end to see what we have done so far. Okay, so we have that effect, we have these, we have these, we have these, we have these. Oh, that is too close, but we have an effect. You can see that you have these animating out while this is scrolling in the opposite direction. Nice effect. But the text and the grid are too close together, so I'm just going to select that and give it a gap of 40. 40 seems to be too small. Let's give it 80. Okay, so I'm going to add another section, and this section is going to be my contact. Then I'm going to give it an ID of contact. I'm going to give it a background color of that black. Then I'm going to add in 2 divs. Then I'm going to add in a grid elements right there in the section. Just like before, I'm going to remove the default settings and set that to 2 grids. Then at the lower breakpoints, I want to make it 1 column. Let's go back. I'm going to drop in 2 divs there, that and that. And for these, I want to drop in an image. That image, I want to choose this black image here. Then here, I'm going to drop in a heading, or a text and a heading rather. And this text is going to be, it's still going to be that pre-title. And we're going to change that color to this. In the heading, the typography is going to be white like that, maybe real white. And of course, it is an H2. So I'm going to say contact, and then I'm going to paste that in. And then for the maximum width, I'm going to set it to 220 pixels. It would be a good idea to group these and these into another div. So I'm just going to add a div. And then I'm going to move those inside the div. The reason you want to group it like that is because you want to space it out from the next element, which will be our form. I'm going to add a form builder, and I'm going to select this div. And I'll go to layout and set vertical align to middle. And I'm going to give it a gap of 20 pixels. And then for this div, I'm going to give it a gap of 8 to separate it a little bit. I'm going to save these, and then I'm going to go to global styles to style this form to look like this. Go to global style. Now it's possible to style the form on the element level, but that would mean that for each form I drop on the website, I'll have to style it one after the other. To demonstrate, I'm going to duplicate this form. And then I'm going to move this form here because I want you to see that the global style is going to affect both of them. I'm going to go to the global styles, and then we're going to go to forms. For the fields, I want to change the background of the field to something like that, but I need something darker. So I'm just going to move it a little bit darker. Let's go to field, border, and then I'm going to change the color to that and make the width 1. Then I'm going to go to the submit button. Then I want it to be full width. Styles, background, I'm going to set it to be off-white. the typography, advanced, and I want it to be uppercase, so I'm just gonna go set it to uppercase. Now let's check the field again. So we have placeholder, and I'm gonna set the placeholder color to this color. To set up the placeholder, I'm just gonna go to the element settings, and then for the name, I'm gonna go to advanced placeholder. I'm gonna write your name, okay. And then for email, advanced placeholder, your email, and then message, advanced placeholder, message. And then for the required, probably we want, and we could just set the size to 0. Doing this is going to allow you to hide it visually, but still available for assistive technologies. So it really depends on if you want to really get rid of that asterisk, even though it means, even though it indicates required fields. That's because even if they don't write anything, you're still going to tell them to fill up something. So you still have that information there. I'm going to delete this other form. So we can go to the typography, labels, and change the font size to 0, okay? And it's gonna hide them just the same way we hide the asterisk. Okay, so let's save this and let's go to responsive. And at this screen size, it's a bit too wide. So at that screen size, what I'm gonna do is to change the maximum width of that grid to about 480 pixels. And then we could go ahead and centralize it in the section. So we could have something nice like that, where it still remains nice at that breakpoint. The next thing we're going to add, I think that's going to be the last thing we're going to add. We're going to add the social icons on this. And what we want is just about 3 of them. So I'm just going to remove these, this, and this. And I'm going to go to the style panel. The icon color is white, which is okay. The background color, I think I want to choose something like that. And then I want it to be circle. And the icon size, I'm going to set it to 18. But I want the icons to be on top of the image. So we're going to have to make it position absolute. We're going to set the bottom value to 0. And then let's go over to that breakpoint. And we want to move it to the top right. So let's click on position absolute again. The bottom was 0, so we have to set it to auto. So let's change the right value to 0. Let's go back to the icon layout, and then we're going to set it to stack vertically. So at this breakpoint, it is on the bottom left corner. By the time we go down the breakpoint, it is now at the top right corner. So let's save it, and then let's see what we have. The form looks a bit too wide. We could go ahead and set a maximum width to it. I think I would prefer to not have that space there. So I'm just going to go in and take off the bottom padding from that section. I'm going to select the form, and then I'm going to go ahead and set the maximum width to 480 pixels. Okay, so one more thing we have to do is to set up that animation effect on the button icon. To get that effect, I'm going to provide a CSS code. I'm going to give that button a class. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to give it a class of hover -- slide down, because that's the class we're going to be using in the CSS snippet I'm going to be providing. Now this is going to have a class of hover slide top right. So I'm going to give it that class, hover -- slide top right. And to copy this class to the next button, which is going to have the same class, I'm going to copy and paste settings. If you check modified, you're going to see that it has that class applied, hover -- slide top right. Then I'm going to come here also and paste settings. Gonna come here. Pasting settings basically applies that class to all of them. And then I'm gonna go into global settings and to the style sheet. What I want to do in the style sheet is just to paste a CSS that I've provided. All the CSS and codes I've provided, I'm gonna link them in the description. So I'm gonna copy and paste the CSS. The one that is gonna cause it to slide, it's just a CSS animation code. It's just a CSS animation. one slice up and then the other starts the animation from the bottom and slides in again. And then the next code is responsible for the one that's going to slide from top to bottom, which is our first button. So let's take a look at it. So you can see that with that code, we have that effect. All right, so I'm going to save this and then we are going to preview that one more time. As you can see, we have that effect here, we have that effect here, we have that effect here. And for the final thing, I'm going to give you a bonus. I want to apply a smooth scrolling. So I'm just going to go to the back end and then I'm going to install a plugin called Mouse Wheel Smooth Scroll. I'm going to install that. But at the moment, that scrolling is not a smooth scroll. I'm going to install that plugin and activate it. It's a very simple plugin that just works. And then go to the settings. I want to reduce this to like 600 and the step size to 150. That's basically all. And I'm going to save this and once we refresh this, we're going to have a smooth scrolling. As you can see, smooth scrolling. Okay, one more thing we didn't do was to link the menus to the section. So I'm just going to come here. I'm going to go ahead and edit the header template. For the first menu item, I'm going to link it to service. The section ID was service. For these, I'm going to link it to work. For these, I'm going to link it to about. Then for these, I'm going to link it to contact. I'm going to save that and I'm going to refresh. And if I click service, it's going to scroll to service. And if I click work, it's going to scroll to work section. And one more thing, I want to add a back to top element. And inside here, I'm just going to drop a back to top element. I'm going to go to the style panel and I want to set it to hide at the top. And then I want it to show halfway. Animation, just fade in, nothing else. Duration, 400 milliseconds. And then for the button settings, I want the background to be something like this. The icon color, maybe something like this. The progress, the progress indicator on the button when you scroll. For the tracker, maybe something like this, maybe a little darker. And for the background, I'm going to set it to white. I'm going to save that. That's basically all. You could just style it to your taste. And we are going to refresh this page. And then we have our button that appears here. And then when I click, it goes to the top. We have the smooth scroll, nice effect. Alright guys, that's the end of the tutorial. Let me know what you think. If you really enjoyed this, let me know what you think about Breakdance also. So if you're interested in getting Breakdance, I have a link in the description. It is an affiliate link. That means if you use that link to purchase Breakdance, I get a commission at no extra cost to you. It is your own way of saying thank you and supporting the channel. So anytime you're ready to buy Breakdance, I'll appreciate it if you use my affiliate link. Until next time, do have a great day. Bye.